Excellent. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. So before we get into your good work, I want to begin with the pandemic. 4.5 years ago, we had to really all pivot and change, and so many things transformed our planet and the way we think. Of all of the things that you went through during that time period, how many of those reverberations exist in the work and the way that you live your life now is?
I think for all of us, right, so many things changed. And I was actually in Morocco when it happened. I was holding a retreat there. And I, because it happened in Italy and when I lived in Italy, I just went to Colombia because my family's from Colombia and my mom was there. And, I went there not realizing that it wasn't for a week because nobody knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was such an interesting also moment for me because in my business, what I was doing, I never realized of how, while many people were relaxing, I was actually expanding, giving back, connecting with people. And, the name of my business is Nomad Atelier. And I think what the pandemic did was that everybody was listening to everyone, right? We were all just, it didn't matter where you were in the world, you were connecting with strangers, you were connecting with people. And really, for me, it was about people started to listen, right? We were all listening because when you slow down, you start kind of like realizing that you're not in this running from one thing to another. And I just started connecting with so many people around the world. My business grew a lot because a lot of what we do as well, and inside Nomad, what I do is I guide women to really understand and know themselves before designing a business.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people started asking themselves questions. When you slow down and you have time, you're asking yourself, is this the life I want to be doing? Is this what I want to do? And afterwards, even when things started getting back to normal, I know a lot of friends of mine who have companies, people were like quitting
Yeah.
and saying, you know what, I loved being outside of the city. I loved being in the countryside. I loved working differently. And just a lot of questions came up. So for me, it was really interesting because a lot of people were coming and saying, okay, you know what? You have such an introspective approach. And maybe I haven't asked myself ever these questions of what I want to do, what I'm good at, what I would love to do. And, in those moments, like what happened to us, which is so surreal, another film,
Yeah.
you kind of, it's like the fear of losing a job wasn't there. It was just like a
Yeah.
fear of like, what am I going to do with my life? And what is this really what I've been doing all the time running to get to this point? It created awareness, I think,
Yeah.
and a lot of listening. And a lot of people were learning too,
Yes.
right? We wanted to learn about things we loved or maybe things we never had time to. So time became a luxury that we all had in
Yeah.
many ways.
Yeah.
And that I think opened a lot of awareness of like where we were in our life. And for me, it was obviously a very big point of growth. And I connected and started working with clients from all over the world because you realized you didn't need to fly or be
Yeah.
close to someone. You could just work with anybody. So there were a lot of things that actually just showed us different ways of doing things.
Yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. And I'm going to do that by putting you in front of a bunch of kids, grade schoolers. It's career day. And one of the kids in the back of the room is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
Okay. Oh, I love this for the kids. It's great. Well, I help design a business. I help women design a business around who they are. And I start with helping them understand who they are. So, in a way, I'm like a soul whisperer.
Uh-huh.
I'm helping you see all different parts of who you are. So, maybe your passions, what you love to do, what you're good at,
Yeah.
and also to see those unseen parts of yourself that you might not even know.
Yeah.
And I help like connect all those things on like a chalkboard, which don't exist anymore, but let's just say on a board.
Yeah.
And when I help connect all those dots, we see what's really different because there's
Yeah.
always something unique to all of us. And we don't always know that.
Yeah.
And when I'm able to like pinpoint that, then we think about how to make money. How do we make money from doing this dream project that we
Yeah.
love? And then I kind of go like into a house with my clients, with these women, and I help them like understand how to tell the story of what they do. So we go and look at the colors and like the brand. How do I tell the story? And I look at the website. How do we sell what we do?
Yeah.
And how do we tell the story on social media, which you all know, obviously,
Yeah.
because you use it. And we help really connect on the story of what they're selling, what their dream project is, and to attract those customers that they love
Yeah.
doing what they love. That's what I do.
So what did you want to be when you were a kid, when you were in the third grade? What was your dream life?
Oh my God, it's so funny. I wanted to be a teacher and astronaut, both.
Okay.
Those are like my two things, and an
Yeah.
astronaut.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting because it's one of the things I ask all always my clients actually when I go to their childhood. I ask them, "What did you play when you were small?"
Yeah.
And I found this picture the other day of myself, like with my little typewriter, because we had typewriters at the time, with the phone.
Uh-huh.
I had a doll also, and I was like in my little chair with my little office. And I would always like have my little board because I was an only child. So my
Yeah.
mom would say, "Oh, go into your room," and I would be like, "Close the door. I'm giving class."
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I didn't become a teacher,
Yeah.
but later in my second life, because I redesigned my life, I realized that I am teaching through mentoring, through coaching, through guidance, just in
Yeah.
a different way.
Absolutely you are. Yeah. So I'm curious, how did you realize this was your calling? Was there a client? Was there a moment? How did this become your path?
Actually, it was probably part of my path because I actually when I graduated business, I went to work for Benetton. I went the North Face, Vans, Eastpak. I worked in the corporate world for
Yeah.
outdoor brands. But funny enough, it's interesting because when you're in this life, right, you're kind of like working like crazy. So sometimes also you don't realize how your personality, I was always saying yes to everything. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I can do it. I can do that. I can do that. I almost had a burnout.
Yeah.
And I had really dreamt for that life because I grew up with my parents got divorced when I was 3 years old, and my father wasn't really present helping. And so, I saw her like do two jobs and do everything to give me everything. And then at one point I was like, okay, I need to build a career where I'm independent economically, where I'm successful. And when I was at that point in my corporate career, and I was working for the North Face at the time, um, I was like, just I was exhausted, and I knew that I knew what I liked. I didn't know at that time in that moment that I didn't know my purpose. I didn't know my why. These were things that years ago, we're talking about 20 years, people weren't talking about it like
Sure.
today.
Yeah.
And so I was very lucky because I had a coach as a leadership coach inside the company. And he saw I was a hard worker, but he's like, "Are you sure this is the life you want?" I'm like, "I don't know." So long story short, I took a bigger promotion. And then that I really didn't, I just kind of was like out. I was like just taking so many things. And there was a reorganization of the company and I was let go, which is very interesting because those
Yeah.
are those moments where you kind of like ask yourself, oh my God, okay, let me go for my next interview then.
Uh-huh.
Or you ask yourself, okay, is this a sign?
Yeah.
Is this a gift? And it was a moment in your life where you kind of have to take a direction. Everybody was looking for people who had my expertise, like in e-commerce, because I was working for brands that at that time, we're talking about 15 years ago, it wasn't common to find someone experienced. So I
Yes.
had on one side, like brands calling me, like Coca-Cola, Ralph Lauren, like come back. And another time, my stomach would be like, this is not what I want. But
Yeah.
your boyfriend or your friends are like, you need to go back. This is the moment. But I went through a journey actually doing kind of what I do today
Yeah.
on just asking myself questions. I took time to travel and I worked with a coach. And there were so many questions that really about like myself and helping me connect dots.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, maybe. And then I realized over time that I was going to start my own business, which had something I had never imagined to be an
Sure.
entrepreneur ever. And so from there, it was that I saw Nomad Atelier, and initially it was just about workshops. And over time, I started seeing how my ideal clients were actually coming in. Like women were like coming to my creative workshops, but they were like, "Oh, can you teach me about business? Can you teach me about branding? Can you teach me about e-commerce?" Which are things that I knew how to do. I just almost like had separated the life.
Yeah.
But the journey has been, as an entrepreneur, you start knowing yourself. And I
Yeah.
started connecting everything, my skills, what I was good at, what I love to do. I discovered my zone of genius that I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
And I connected to my purpose. And that's where Nomad Atelier like changed and became what it is today,
Yeah.
which is doing that business mentoring, bringing in that business experience that I know that I have of 20 years of corporate, but then also working with women in such a deeper way of them knowing themselves first and
Yeah.
designing a business around who they are. It
Yeah.
was very interesting. It's really inspired my own journey.
Sure. Well, you have to be a role model for your clients. You have to exude this life that naturally so that they understand where you're coming from. So how do you balance that? Coming from high corporate, having these self-realization moments, finding your destiny, but also having to evolve as a human being, and then obviously helping your clients. How do you balance all that every day? What's the motivation?
You know, they're mirrors for you. Our clients are mirrors for us.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you have to be doing really well in a business is to attract your ideal clients.
Yeah.
And when you're very clear on how you communicate what your personality is, and I do a lot about a personal brand. That's what I work around with clients. I attract these clients that are like me, and I'm like, and I know what they're going through because I've gone through it. I know that they're wanting the economic, elevated lifestyle, but at the same time, they're maybe repositioning themselves because they're kind of doing their second life.
Yeah.
And we work a lot on that part that I've had to work on,
Yeah.
right, myself. And it's like, how do you see yourself differently? And
Yeah.
how do you let go of those limiting beliefs? And so a lot of what I do in a way is almost a healing, always from both sides. It's interesting. I imagine therapeutic people are doing the same thing and they don't realize, right?
Yeah.
But we see that. And it's actually something where I just feel it's so natural. And I think it's really about also me being quite careful in who I work with,
Yeah.
that I feel that is aligned with me, because then they motivate me. I see that I make an impact. I see that they see things, and that just motivates you in a way that you can't even explain. You're like, okay, this is my why. This is why I do what I do.
Yeah. Well, you probably learn a lot from them. I mean, in an unexpected way, you think you're going in and you're going to be the teacher and they're going to be the pupil, but at the end of the day, there's this transference of things that go both ways.
Both ways. It's always both ways, right? It's like in a couple. You're like, oh, your wife is this, but you know what? Actually, she's teaching me this and I'm teaching her that. And I
Yeah.
think it's about just being open to seeing
Yeah.
and being guided in a
Yeah.
way.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and ran into the 18-year-old version of you, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, this kind of vision quest to finding your destiny. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Well, for sure, I would say to stop worrying about being perfect
Yeah.
because we need to learn how to be soft with ourselves and also softer with others. And that's one of the things that I would definitely say to her. And to learn to love all her sides, her imperfect self, her sides, because when she'll do that, she will own who she is fully.
Yeah.
And there's the power in that, right? Of owning when you make a mistake and owning when you're great at something and just seeing your soft side and your vulnerable sides as also something that's good and not something that's holding you back, because you can connect with other people in a deeper way. And I've learned that a lot.
Yeah.
So let go of imperfection and learn to love yourself, because we don't always know how to love ourselves fully.
Yeah. So if you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that embodies all of these qualities that you admire, that you have evolved into, that might help you on your journey, one person alive, who would that be?
Oh my God, I have so many different people. It's not
Yeah.
like one. And I'm
Right.
always like different friends that I have that inspire me. I mean, I think there's that's a great question, because I'm gonna think about this. Perseverance and courage, right? I think
Yeah.
is one of the things that and like I saw Karan Sejare. This is a person, she's in the fashion world, but years ago she like was an illustrator,
Yeah.
right? And she started with illustrations and she created this whole business around her passions. And I guess that attracts me because I
Yeah.
think I'm very attracted by people who reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
Then there's always, there's the courage and the perseverance that you have that you see in people. Like I always think even like Mandela, if I had to go to dinner, oh my God, I would love to meet
Yeah.
with him, because how were you, you showed humanity how with true like patience, because I'm so impatient. So I think that's like I would be very attracted
Yeah.
to talk to this kind of people. Um, I'm I love Axel Vedvood. He's like a curator, and he's also an interior designer. I love art, so
Yeah.
there's something about it that I'm attracted to it, right? So I think I would go like with artists like Rothko. Like I'm very,
Yeah.
I love to like grab from different people. And I think
Sure.
that's who I am
Yeah.
actually too. Like I won't be the person who has like one friend
Yeah.
kind of friend. I think that all of us have something different where the most unexpected conversation with the fisherman that I had in Colombia
Yeah.
last year, I was like, oh my God, he's told me, those words where, you just kind of think about like really the simplicity of life.
Yeah.
So
That's a great answer. I love it. So let me ask you this. Of all of these things that you've done and accomplished and evolved into, most importantly, what are you the proudest of?
I would say of on one level, I have to be practical of designing the life I want
Yeah.
because I had to let go of the fear of not being able to do it. And I think
Yeah.
that's what sometimes, hold people a lot back.
Yeah.
But I'm also, I think more than anything, very proud that I listened to myself
Yeah.
and I listened to my intuition. And if I had not done that, you have no idea, Joe, when I like quit like the North Face and corporate people were like, where I wouldn't accept, they were like, are you crazy? No, you need to
Right.
go. And that's like, you're never going to get a job like that. You're never going to make that money again. And I do today, but I have this freedom. And I think that's the thing that when you're redesigning a life like I did,
Yeah.
you have to be very clear on what's important for you if you're letting go of things.
Yeah.
And I was very clear that the freedom that I've created today, designing the life I want with my business, is something that I would never have had stayed in corporate.
Sure.
I can like work 3 nights and tens and weekends. And then on Tuesday, I'll just go to Venice because it's a
Yeah.
beautiful day, sunny, and I will go and have my spritz in front of the waters in Venice. I'll be with my notebook. I'll be creating ideas of a new thing to do, a new workshop or a new product. And that is my freedom to my creativity to make space for different parts of who I am.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I perceive myself as somebody who's very free, which everybody does. They're like, oh, she's the only one who can just like go to South Africa next month and just work from there.
Yeah.
And I think I really do perceive myself a lot like people see me, if even if they like, they'll go into my house and they'll be like, God, this house, like, it's exactly like you. You're so nomad. Or even like people like, we have to go to this restaurant in Milan because it's so nomad, right?
Yeah.
But it's not because I do curate it, but not because I'm like curating things.
Yeah.
It's just I have a very defined taste. So people kind of say, that's so Katherine. She'll say what she thinks, which I do.
Yeah.
Um, at the same time, she's free. Like she doesn't have to go out with these people because that like I really freedom has been that part and I really created that. So I kind of think that that's it's the way I'm perceived that I actually perceive myself.
Yeah. I love it. That sounds like, I mean, my other incarnation is jazz. That's the number one answer that musicians always give. Why do you love jazz? It's always freedom. Like freedom is the best possible scenario. And I know it gets cliche, especially in America when it gets thrown around, but it really is. It embodies so much more than that. So, Catherine, if anyone wants to reach out, they have questions, they're curious, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
They go to nomadatelier.com
Okay.
and there's also their tools where you can find even like a free blueprint guide because a lot of what I do is it's based on the personal blueprint,
Yeah.
kind of knowing yourself, how to connect the dots, your passions, what you love to do. And that guide can be something beautiful to explore if they're wanting to understand what's next in their life and maybe or understand how they are, what they're good at. It could be a beautiful tool for them to access.
Yeah. Wonderful, Catherine. This has been so great. Final question. What's the best thing about living in Italy?
The food.
Of course it is.
And the art and the
Are you
art. I mean,
kidding?
I love art, but the food, and it's so funny you're asking, Joe, because people ask me, you've been there almost like 25 years. Why? And I said, you know what? Italians, they can have the most simple cuisine. Like, you don't need to go to a nice restaurant. You can eat like the pasta and the glass of wine or Parmesan cheese. And they live through the senses here in this
Uh-huh.
country,
Absolutely.
It's like
Yep.
you feel it. So that's one of my, I love like to live through the senses, and I love food. I'm a foodie. So I
Yeah.
guess that's one thing.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's one of the most memorable things about being over there. Katherine, this has been so good. Thank you so much for your story, your passion, your time. I appreciate it. And send my love to the old country. I miss it.
Oh, thank you for having me. And of course, you're welcome. You know that when you ever come in that area of Venice, you let me know, okay?
Absolutely. I certainly will. Thank you so much.
All right.
Take
Bye,
care. See
Joe.
you later.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.
Ciao.